48. That's it. That is exactly how many hours you have. When water invades a home, a lot of property owners kind of think they have time to figure out a game plan. Maybe wait for the weekend to pass. But the reality? It's far more urgent. You have exactly 48 hours before microscopic mold spores begin colonizing the structure of your building. The clock literally starts ticking the second water touches your drywall.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the invisible mechanics of water damage. We're going to look closely at the incredibly strict scientific protocols required to actually save a property rather than just wiping down the surface. Our insights today are pulled directly from comprehensive documentation from Fortress Water Damage Restoration Jacksonville, a crew that deals with these massive coastal emergencies day in and day out.
To make sense of what is usually a totally chaotic emergency, we're going to deconstruct this professional methodology into 5 parts. 1. Unique coastal water risks. 2. The 48-hour mold clock. 3. 3 categories of water. 4. The science of structural drying. And 5. Navigating insurance and costs.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Unique Coastal Water Risks.
So why are coastal properties like those in Jacksonville Beach so uniquely vulnerable to rapid, devastating water intrusion? Well, it's essentially a compounding formula for disaster. First off, you've got Atlantic storms bringing intense wind and storm surge. Then you have high water tables and sandy soils. Sure, the sand drains quickly on the surface, but during heavy rain, that groundwater can rise straight up right into foundation slabs. Add to that a humid subtropical climate where moisture just absolutely thrives. And crucially, there's the human element. Think about all those unoccupied vacation rentals. A simple leak from an HVAC condensation line or a water heater can literally go undetected for weeks, completely saturating multiple rooms before anyone even unlocks the front door.
And then there's a highly unique coastal threat that we have to talk about: salt air. Constant exposure to salt air rapidly corrodes aging plumbing, especially in older beachfront homes. So when those pipes eventually fail, property owners aren't just dealing with your standard freshwater damage from a clean supply line break. No, they are combating saltwater intrusion. Saltwater makes things so much worse by leaving behind highly corrosive mineral deposits deep inside the walls and on structural components, and that demands some incredibly specialized treatment to fix. Which brings us to Section 2, the 48-hour mold clock.
We absolutely have to talk about how these environmental factors build into an immediate biological threat. The source documentation is incredibly strict on this point and honestly a bit alarming. In humid climates like Florida's, a simple leak is never just a leak. It rapidly escalates into a very serious health hazard. Because the air is already so heavy with moisture, any untreated water intrusion begins growing structural mold in a mere 24 to 48 hours. It will colonize saturated drywall, insulation, and wood framing long before you ever see any dark spots forming on the outside of your walls.
Now, I know it's tempting for people to try and play hero with some beach towels and a standard box fan. They feel the carpet, it feels dry to the touch, and they assume they're in the clear. But that approach fails entirely. Using a fan simply masks the problem, while hidden moisture trapped inside the wall cavities and under the subfloor quietly rots the structural framing from the inside out. Restoration professionals actually sum this up perfectly with a pretty stark warning: surface drying fools homeowners while hidden mold spreads.
So to combat this invisible threat, professionals don't just plug in bigger fans, they actually elevate the cleanup process into applied material science. They rely on something called psychrometrics. Now, what is that? It's the engineering field concerned with the physical and thermodynamic properties of gas-vapor mixtures. By mastering psychrometrics, technicians can perfectly balance temperature, humidity, and airflow to completely eradicate moisture from deep within structural cavities. That is how you stop mold from ever taking root. Okay, moving right along to Section 3. 3 categories of water.
Because, believe it or not all water is created equal. Based on the industry standard IICRC S500 guidelines, water is classified into 3 strict categories that dictate the safety and remediation response. Category 1 is clean water. Think of a burst supply line. It requires rapid but standard drying. Category 2 is gray water. This comes from things like washing machine overflows or dishwasher leaks. It definitely has some contamination, so it needs enhanced cleanup. But Category 3, that's black water. We're talking highly contaminated storm floodwater or sewage backups. Category 3 introduces dangerous pathogens like E. coli and hepatitis right into the home, so it is treated strictly as a serious biohazard requiring intense antimicrobial treatments and the physical removal of the affected materials.
Understanding those threat levels leads us directly into Section 4, the science of structural drying.
To actually dry a structure, professionals follow a mandatory, highly calculated 3-phase process. There is no guesswork here.
This protocol is specifically designed to halt the damage in its tracks, completely remove the moisture, and definitively verify that successful drying has been achieved. Let's break those down.
Phase 1, it's all about brute speed and power. We're talking massive truck-mounted units capable of sucking up thousands of gallons of standing water every single hour. And this absolutely has to happen within those first crucial hours to salvage any of the base materials. While that's happening, technicians are rapidly setting up physical containment barriers to stop the water from wicking into the unaffected, dry areas of the building, effectively isolating the damage zone.
Then we hit Phase 2, and this is where that psychrometric science really flexes its muscles. Professionals deploy high-grade commercial dehumidifiers and air movers. The air movers create extremely specific circulation patterns that literally force trapped moisture to evaporate out of the framing and subfloors. Then the dehumidifiers pull that newly airborne humidity right out of the environment. And here's the kicker. This has to be perfectly calculated. If you dry it too fast, you run the risk of causing secondary overdrying damage, which means warping hardwood floors or cracking the plaster.
Finally, Phase 3 is verification. A true professional isn't just going to guess that a room is dry. They utilize thermal imaging cameras and invasive moisture probes to prove it. Materials like wood framing must hit a very strict 15 to 19% moisture content, and concrete has to measure under a staggering 1%. Only when these exact, unforgiving metrics are firmly met is the equipment finally packed up and pulled from the property.
All right, our final stretch, Section 5, navigating insurance and costs.
Let's shift from the physical, material science to the financial reality. How do property owners actually fund these extensive recovery efforts? Well, it is absolutely vital to understand this next point. Standard homeowners insurance generally covers sudden, internal, and accidental events, like a pipe bursting in the kitchen. However, if your property is damaged by flooding from an external storm surge or rising groundwater, your standard insurance will not cover you. That strictly requires a separate National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP policy. Knowing exactly where the water came from is step 1 in getting covered.
But even if you have the absolute best coverage, adjusters still need proof. To ensure a claim gets approved without a massive fight, property owners or their restoration company must provide an exhaustive paper trail. We're talking daily moisture logs, time-stamped thermal imaging photos, comprehensive moisture mapping data, and exact diagrams of where the drying equipment was placed. This mountain of evidence proves that strict industry standards were met, ensuring the insurance company actually pays out for the mitigation. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a crucial question to reflect on. We've explored the hidden, frankly terrifying complexities of structural damage, the biological ticking clock of mold, and the strict engineering required to dry a building properly. So when water inevitably invades a home, risking your health and your financial investment, will you trust a fan or will you trust the science? Think about that the next time you see a seemingly harmless puddle on the floor. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.